We value teachers and we want to give to y'all. So I hope y'all enjoy this. Thanks for being with us. I'm really looking forward to tonight.
Thank you for that, Susan. And I don't want to really take up any more of everyone's time. I know you're all here to see Colum. My colleague, Nikki Wilson, is running the PowerPoint for us right now. Nikki, if you could go ahead and move ahead for us real quickly. You all can check out the textbooks from Perfection Learning on here. This was the obligatory slide so that they would pay for our Zoom accounts. And so you can click on that there and get directly to those and request review copies even. So check those out if you're interested. Go ahead, Nikki, please. Thank you. And from another one of our sponsors, the Garden of English. Tim, would you like to comment on this real quickly?
Yeah, just super quick. The link is actually thegardenofenglish.com, but there's tons of free resources that are there. Brandon and I are actually running summer workshops as well that last week, the first 2 weeks of August, both in the evening and during the day. You can check those out at thegardenofenglish.com as well.
All right. Thank you, Tim, so much. And the way I like to put this is that might be the kind of training that a person would want when they find out today that they're teaching AP tomorrow. So the next link here is to the Mosaic t-shirts. They were a hit last year. And so we have another person who is a volunteer, Miss Christy Seidel, who owns Bloom, and she made the t-shirts for everyone last year. And I think she does them at cost. And so that's how she's able to keep them here. But go ahead and check those out. And that's great, Nikki. Thank you so much. And last thing here, I'll say this about Nikki. None of this would happen without Nikki Wilson. She has been the organizer of the schedule and Eventbrite and everything else. And Susan and I, and when Nikki reached out to Susan saying she was interested too, we never could have imagined how great everything would have come together. So shout outs to Susan and to Nikki, as well as to Tim Freitas, who is one of our volunteers. Christy Seidel is one of our volunteers. She runs the AP language group. Alfonso Correa, some of you all know him. He's a former AP language committee member and a question leader at the reading. He is one of our volunteers. He's not here tonight. And another one of our volunteers is Jackie Stallworth. I don't think I missed anyone, did I, Tim or Susan? All right, great. So tonight is going to be just a bit of a conversation with Colum McCann, National Book Award winner and author of A Paragon, but also founder of the organization Narrative 4. And he's going to talk a little bit about that and what that's doing for teachers and what that is, what their opportunities they're providing for teachers. But Colum, I think, is a teacher fan. And if you've just joined us, you missed his anecdote about when are we going to hear the airplane, the person calling the people boarding the plane for all teachers to go ahead and board the plane. Which would be great if as teachers we had more time to travel, but that's a different discussion, right? So Colum, you and I had talked about a couple of questions and things, and I kind of really wanted to start with this one question that I'd sent to you. What does it mean to live the life of both a teacher and a writer? Because so many of us on this call, you mentioned earlier, so many of these teachers are the ones who are in the fight, really working in education for the benefit of their students. I mean, it's July and they're on a PD, whatever time it is, and they are on this call. So what do you think it means to live the life of a teacher and a writer?
I think we're braided together in the most extraordinary way. I think it's very important for teachers and readers, in fact, to understand that they are the ones who extend a book. In other words, that I might write a book, and I might spend 2, 3, 4, even 5 years, as I did on a Paragon, writing a book, but the book becomes nothing until it's read. And so when you find your reader, that validates the book. It extends the book. It makes the book bigger. It brings it into new territories, into new ideas. People branch out from it. But more important than that is that if you can write a book that you can bring to your students, then you sort of extend this tree or this branch, or in fact this a paragon. Now, for those who most of you won't know it, I wrote a book called A Paragon, which is a crazy title, but it means a shape with a countably infinite number of sides. And I do believe that when we talk about education and when we talk about literature, we're talking about a shape, a story shape that can have an infinite number of sides. And we don't know as writers who we influence. We don't know as teachers who we touch and influence. We don't even know as ordinary people out in the world how our lives actually extend. But it does seem to me that the helix, the double helix, the DNA between literature and teaching is extraordinarily important. And the fact that some of my books get taught in schools, and the fact that Narrative 4 is now developing a curriculum for high school teachers to engage with books, whether it be A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Bea, who's a founder of Narrative 4, or whether it be The Great Gatsby, or whether it be Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, which is these things that we're bringing into the Narrative 4 artist network and learning module curriculum. When all of these things don't fall apart, when all of these things actually do come together, I think what emerges is that we're participating together in a really deep form of democracy, and a really deep form of human engagement. And is it tough? Yeah, it's tough. Is it a pain in the rear end sometimes, dealing with the Board of Education? Yeah, you guys know it is. Is it a pain to come up with your lesson plans and all of these things? But in the end, in the deep end of all of this stuff, and this is where literature comes together with the art and the act of teaching. There's something profoundly beautiful about like allowing people to experience other lives, to experience other geographies, to experience other cultures, to experience other politics, all of these things. The beauty of literature is that it invites us into a world that we did not yet know. The beauty of teaching, it seems to me, is that you also allow your students to come into this world, instead of telling them that this is what they should think, or instructing in certain ways. You sort of just lay it out there and say, interpret. And you find a wealth of things that are available in that relationship between artist, teacher, student. It seems to me to be a direct arrow that goes right down the heart of things. One of the things that we're trying to do at Narrative 4 is we're trying to make, instead of it being a direct arrow, have the arrow move, but also make it into a circle, so that the students come back to the artists, and the teachers come back to the artists, and so forth. But I do think, I mean, your question is so important, because I think the relationship between literature and teaching, yeah, it's there, and it's coded into our DNA.
Well, great, because that really leads me to think about like a follow-up here that you and I had discussed. And it you've already touched on it a little bit, but I think, Susan used the phrase being fed in this way. And I think that these teachers, especially if any of you are fellows of the National Writing Project or familiar with the work that the National Writing Project has done, I'm a fellow myself. I have no doubt about this, but it's something we love to think about. But a lot of our colleagues may not think this way, and especially a lot of our administrators may not think this way. But how does writing inform teaching, and how does teaching inform writing?
So, how do you mean that specifically? How does writing inform teaching? Can you be specific about how you what you mean about that? I mean, I have some ideas
Mhm.
about how writing informs teaching, um, but can you be specific?
Sure. So in living the life of a writer, the things that I learn, the the way it changes the way I think about the world, the empathy that we've been talking about, how does that carry over concretely into the work we do with our students or our teachers or with education in general? And then vice versa. How does the work we do as teachers, the way it changes our mind, the way it changes the way we see the world, affect the way it turns back into our writing?
Yeah, it's such an important idea, and I'll start by telling you this, that every time I start a novel, Brandon, I think I'm never going to be able to do it again. I'm exhausted from the last one, and I don't have any ideas, and they're all going to know I'm a charlatan, and I'm talking through my hat, and if I'm not talking through my hat, I'm talking through my arse, and that's I'm going to be found out, and I don't know what it is that I want to say or what I need to say, but eventually then I start to work away, and then the ideas come, and the ideas come, and you work, and you build a novel from the inside out. I mean, there's a lot of mystique about the life of the writer, and there's a lot of mistakes made about the life of a writer, as if we know what it is that we're going to do in advance, as if we have some sort of like deep intelligence that others don't have. It's not true. Writers operate by the seat of their pants. They hope that they're going to hit something glorious. They hope that somewhere deep inside there is a vein that you will touch. In this way, I feel it very akin to the act and the art of teaching. And when I go into a class, I think, God, I hope I can do it today. I hope I can reach one of these students. I hope I can get it right. And I think all teachers know that feeling of doubt when you go into school, or doubt when you start a year. And are we all immediately confident in the beginning that we're all going to do it? No way. And it's the same thing for writers. I start with a blank page and think, man, I'm not going to be able to get through this. And I can't see 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line having a completed manuscript. But you do it. And you do it because you love it. And you do it because somehow you believe in it. And you do it because somehow in the deep background there's something thrilling with a H, and there's something trilling with a sound as well. Uh, that keeps you going. There's something that's going on that makes you believe that this will eventually change the world. And if it doesn't change the world, it'll keep the world in check, at the very, very, very least. And so, uh, you know, um, I mean, a lot of the teachers on here who look at the life of writers should know that one of the most important quotes to a lot of writers is the Sam Beckett quote. It's like, no matter, try again, again, fail better. Fail better. Fail better. Because every friggin' thing is a failure. And I know I've taught high school classes and I've taught college classes, and I came out of there thinking, Jesus Christ, I just failed. But I got to go back in, and I got to and I got to fail better, because nothing ever becomes entirely exquisite. And if it ever becomes entirely exquisite, give it up. Retire. Because that's, it's never ever ever really going to work, and that's part of the beauty of it. There's always going to be something broken at the edges, but you have to reach for the highest thing that you possibly can as a writer and a teacher. And that's why I think that we're sort of inextricably linked. Um, and that's why, do when I write, do I think about the teacher who might be teaching this down the line? No. I don't think about the school or the classroom or anything like that. If I write a book and then it gets taught in the classroom, I am so extraordinarily overjoyed. You know, and Evan Barker, who's on, a lot of you know, and he's on the call tonight. You know, we're together with Narrative Four, and all the people at Narrative Four. My co-founder Lisa Consiglio, Lee Keelock, all of these wonderful people. We're developing, these learning modules. One of the learning modules is to teach a Paragon, my most recent novel, in high schools. To me, and it was already done by Mary Sloan in Floyd County, and to me, the fact that she took on this novel, it, I mean, it makes me so, it humbles me, it excites me, it makes me feel, I don't know, extraordinarily grateful that there are teachers in the world who take my novel and they extend it into the world. They make the novel bigger than it is. So if I write something, it's there. Yes, it's fine, but it never becomes actually real in the world until you guys take it and shape it into the different ideas that it wants to become. And I think that that's what the link between us writers and us teachers happens to be.
So I think, well, I know you hit on so many things that I'm going to go ahead and say that the vast majority of the people in this room feel. The idea of feeling like a charlatan. I remember a colleague of mine saying he's been teaching for 35 years and he's still waiting for someone to walk in and tell him they figured out he's a joke and he should leave the building. And I feel like that a lot myself. I know other people that I've talked to in this room feel like that a lot themselves, and constantly think about what more they can do for their students. I also think that you hit the world on the idea, you hit the nail on the head with the idea that a teacher makes a book more than you as the author might have ever thought it would be. And I think that's a wonderful sentiment that all of you who are in the room attending this need to think about what you are doing and how you are making that book so much more for the students who are reading your book. And I just think that's a beautiful sentiment. So thank you. So that brings me to another question. But before I ask that question, I want to put somebody on the spot, because someone, the very first teacher to talk about in the chat having read a Paragon was Josh Miller. And if one of my co-hosts could find Josh in the chat and ask him to unmute. Josh, I'd love to hear, and I think Colum would love to hear, if you have a question or you have any thoughts about the novel. Is that okay with you, Colum?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great.
That would be fantastic.
Great. So Josh, I understand we're putting you on the spot. I don't know you, Josh, but I'm inviting you to, you've got the opportunity to talk back to the author here. So what do you got?
Hi, yeah, that's awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can. Go for it.
Cool. Yeah, so no worries. Yeah, I think that, I loved reading the book so much because it was just the way that it interwove so many different narratives and they just all came together so beautifully, especially the really small ones. It just, my mind was blown so many times. I guess I would love to, I was thinking so many times, and I teach at a very, a well-funded school full of very motivated students. So my students are very, very game for new and challenging texts. But I guess the one thing that I was concerned about thinking about as I was reading it and having a dream of maybe someday teaching it was how to find entry points for my students for all of these different cultures and backgrounds that they might just not initially identify with. And so kind of, I guess, find those different entry points to really get them into a book that is so complex, and it doesn't just read like a straight novel or a straight narrative like so many of the things that we have taught traditionally. So I guess that would be my question. That was kind of what I was thinking in the back of my head as I was, like I said, sort of envisioning and dreaming about one day maybe teaching this novel in one of my literature classes.
Josh, if I'm to turn that into like a shorter question, correct me if this isn't what you're
Sure.
asking. Colum, what do you think would be some entry points for students who may not be familiar with or are new to? I just said the same thing in two different ways. Some of the narratives presented in a Paragon. Is that fair, Josh?
Yeah, and I guess maybe let me, as you said that, that kind of made me figure out a way to ask that a little more directly. So much of teaching is sometimes, we pre-teach the culture behind the novel. We pre-teach, when we're going to teach a novel. If I'm going to teach a novel like Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, I make sure that I pre-teach the Vietnam War for the students that don't know about it yet, right? So, and a Paragon tackles so many different cultural backgrounds and contexts. I guess the kind of pre-teaching that would need to be done, and I guess maybe you don't necessarily need to prime the pump 100%. You could just dive in and the students can learn as they go. But, in thinking about the traditional way, we do sort of, teach background and pre-teach and prime the pump a little bit. I could see as being a little more challenging with a text like this.
Thanks, Josh. So Colum, I'll leave you to it.
Yeah, that's a brilliant and such an important question. And one of the things that I think we all know is that our students sometimes don't need to be led anywhere. Sometimes we have to be, as teachers, the ones who are led by them. And sometimes mystery joins things together, and I don't want to be too pie in the sky about this, but there are ways to engage with texts that where we basically say we embrace some of the confusion. We allow some of the quote unquote ignorance to be part of what's going on, and that the contextualization actually comes later sometimes in the realm of the things. That being said, Josh is entirely right. The teacher has to be ready. She or he has to have so much of the background and ways to engage, and that's what we're trying to do in developing our learning modules for narrative 4, which we're in the process of doing right now. We're trying to straddle the tightrope that exists between these two notions, because sometimes just letting the students go with a text can lead to some of the most magical moments that you can have in the classroom. Do you have to have engaged students to do that? No, not necessarily. Sometimes it seems to me, and I've done this with, I've worked with them, kids who've been in juvie and come from broken schools, broken backgrounds, broken families, and so on. Sometimes just allowing them to engage with the text works, but then you also have to have a plan in mind. And you have to be ready. One of the things that we're hoping to do, Josh, with this whole system that we're developing right now, is to have the teacher have all of the background, but also have the ability to be agile in the classroom, and to sort of engage the wealth that's coming from students, the wealth of ideas, even, and I know this is kind of weird sometimes, the wealth of confusion that comes about with the text. And I keep coming back to this word, and I keep coming back to the idea of messiness, because I am interested in us re-engaging with the different colors and different shades of our experience in this country in particular. Instead of us saying that it's one particular shade here, there, and everywhere, to talk about it, being a mosaic. Guess what? It's a mosaic, And a mosaic takes all the broken pieces in times, and it finds the beauty in the broken places, as Terry Tempest Williams would have said, and then puts it back in. I'm interested in the kaleidoscopic ideas. I'm also interested in mistakes and failures, and mistakes of interpretation, and all these things. But the teacher always has to be prepared. I know that. So if the teacher has enough, and I don't like this word, um, and I'll search for a better word, but I'll say it now. If the teacher has enough ammunition behind her, um, there will, it will eventually, it will eventually work, and then you can experiment in all sorts of extraordinary ways. But also, I think that we have to look at our students and say, hey, you can deal with this. There's a lot of there's a lot of safety going on. I remember reading, at the age of 12, the poetry of Dylan Thomas and Ray Bradbury at the age of 13, and so on, and being allowed, and not necessarily knowing what was going on, but challenging texts. And the last thing I'll say before I hand it back to you, Brandon, is that all things excellent are as difficult as they are rare. And that's from Spinoza. I'll say it again. All things excellent are as difficult as they are rare. In other words, if we're going to do a good job, we have to know that it's going to be tough, and it's not always going to actually work. But it's the only thing we can and should do as teachers, and quite frankly, as writers as well. Now, I'm not saying writers should work in any one particular way. I happen to be an activist writer, but if somebody wants to write about a book about a buttercup or a cup of tea or whatever else it happens to be, that's great. They don't have to write about social issues or anything else that's going on. But we do have to be aware of the power of what it is that we want to at least try to do.
Colum, you've given us all so much to think about there, and the chat bears that out um, so much. I'd like to ask you um, something you said there brought me back to something you had said earlier, and it's back with the whole charlatan comment. But it was the idea that you had, and I'm going to, my words, not yours. I'm going to butcher it. Where the author doesn't necessarily know, they don't have it planned out, it's messy, they don't always know where they're going, and there's something so permissive about that for teachers too, because teachers, especially younger teachers, I remember feeling like this. So many people that I worked with felt this way, and teachers with whom I've worked as a teacher educator, I know feel this way, as if they're expected to be experts on all of the texts that they're reading, like their college professors were. I had this course in Chaucer, and this guy was a PhD, and he'd written 500 pages on the Nun's Tale. How that happens, that's a different discussion. But it's so wonderful to hear that it's about the teaching, really, not the books per se.
Right.
And permissive in allowing us to go in and not be experts in the book, but experts in the teaching of books and thinking about what teaching means there. Is that a fair way to think about that, you think, from your perspective?
It's an incredibly fair way to think about it. I'm going to say something that I don't want to sound pretentious, but there, and I want to unpack it. There's a Dostoevsky quote that says, "To be too acutely conscious is to be diseased." Right? And like I'd be thinking, if I'm standing in the bar and the guy beside me says, "Oh, I've got a Dostoevsky quote," I'd want to thump him one in the side of the head. But let's unpack this for a second. To be too aware of what it is that what you want to do actually brings an illness to your work. I think of that as an author. If I'm saying I'm going to only talk about man's inhumanity to man, and this is what my theme is, then I will only think about this one thing. Instead, when one works on a poem, or when one works on a play, or when one works on a novel, uh, a lot of the time it's coming from a place that you don't necessarily know, and the ideas about it come later, and not necessarily from the author, but sometimes from the critics, and mostly from the teachers. And so that often a writer's deep intelligence happens to be her or his emotional intelligence. And then it is the teachers who put down a different sort of intelligence on it too. But sometimes I do believe that I wish we could in the classroom allow that same sort of emotional intelligence to be understood. And rather than saying this book is about, Lord of the Flies is about, The Great Gatsby is about, instead of saying that, like, how does it make you feel? And how did it change you? And how are you going to change the world after having read this book, young 14-year-old down there in the back who's pretending not to listen to me, but actually is? And so when we talk about the act and the art of teaching, it seems to me that that somehow, if we can as teachers learn to, yes, do the things that we're supposed to do for the Board of Education and do all the things that we have to satisfy our principal for, but also then to feed the souls of these young people who are going to go out and somehow change the world, who are going to kick down the doors in certain ways, and also to be able to say to them, guess what? Uh, I know the best three words as a teenager are I love you, and probably the best three words for all people in their lives. But another three really good words are I don't know. I don't know. And to be able to admit to that. And I gotta say, I wrote a Paragon, and some of the critiques from it, from the kids in Eastern Kentucky, were smarter than the things that I had thought about as I was writing it. I happened to engage with those kids and Mary Sloan's kids, and talk with them, and some of the questions that they gave me were smarter than the things that I had thought about while I was writing it, and that blows my mind. And this is the beauty then of literature too, is that it allows that deeper, wilder intelligence to emerge. And so that one of the things that we have to do as teachers is to work within the strictures of where we are, and yet also take off the harness in certain ways, and allow the class to flow in ways that we weren't necessarily ready for. And that's one of the things. So when we're developing these learning modules for Things Fall Apart, Great Gatsby, To Kill a Mockingbird, A Paragon, A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Bea, Salma Lane by Ruth Freeman, all of these things that we're planning on doing, contemporary literature and quote unquote classic literature. What we hope to do is allow the teacher uh, to have as much of the knowledge that she wants behind it, but also ideas to turn it into something new. And if you want to find out about it, chat to our guys. Evan is there. Evan, maybe put a narrative 4 thing on the on the chat or something like that. A link, or because these things are important. You guys are on the front line. You're absolutely on the front line. And it is really now the front line of democracy as much as anything else. And I can't think of a place in American society that is more, potentially democratic than the classroom. And it's also where a lot of contention can happen too. So you guys are custodians of this very important idea, and that's why, I think, having a chat like this, or us engaging in this way, is so, important, certainly for me. And I need to listen to you guys. I shouldn't be talking all the time.
Well, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you before we kind of open it up to some questions. Yes, I guess you got a direct message from someone that says it looks like your bug tent has fallen. And, yeah, it's close, but I'll be all right. So it's really an important question to think about. And I don't really like saying things like in these times, all times face struggles. Teachers have been especially English teachers have been especially on the the front lines of what some people have called a culture war over these last several years. We're not going to get into that whole discussion and definition of that, but I think it's important, as my last question, that it's the one that I had shared with you via email, to talk about this. And it's, can we, or are we allowed, or how are we allowed to write or tell other people's stories based on our backgrounds, our experiences? How do we navigate that? And really that comes from, in a Paragon column, just frankly, you're writing about a lot of people who don't look like you and don't have those experiences. But there's been so much said about empathy too. And I know teachers have trouble navigating that with students sometimes. I have lots of teachers in the city where I work who say, yes, but if this is all we read, then all kids do is define themselves by the struggle. But then they said, we don't want to leave that out completely. It's such an important and timely topic, and a huge one, but you've got about 3 minutes to answer it.
Okay. And if I have 3 minutes, I could talk for 30 minutes about this. And here to me, what is incredibly important: all these people who are talking about these issues, about cultural appropriation, about going into the wrong places, about misdirection, and all these things. All these people are entirely right. Thank you for them. God bless them. I mean, the academics who started bringing this stuff up, 20 years ago, and really got a little bit of heat about 10 years ago, and now really has an enormous heat right now, they are right. Because writers and corporations and politicians and all sorts of people have gone into places and they have plundered, mea culpa, they have stereotyped, they have done all, like all sorts of things. They've condescended, they've patronized, they've done all these things. It's very, very true, and that's so important to acknowledge. And so that the this has happened and will happen. At the same time, and on the same hand, not a different hand. This is really important, Brandon. It's not a different hand. I'm not saying on the other hand. On the exact same hand, there are artists who can go into another place and bow their heads and humbly say, I don't know. I would like to know. Can you teach me? Can you increase my culture by introducing me to your culture? Can we talk about not so much cultural appropriation as cultural celebration? Can we talk about the mosaic of what this thing can actually be? Can we sort of join these things, and the tension and the messiness of these things and the contradictions of these things and the multiple truths of all these things, and bring them to a place where we can sit down together and examine them, and enjoy them, and the key word here is humility. So and that's not just like on the part of artists, it's also on the part of teachers. It's also, frankly, on the part of students. And they have to humbly go in and bow their heads and say, I know nothing about, when I'm reading Things Fall Apart. I know nothing about Nigeria. I know nothing about colonialism. I know nothing about, the 1950s. And let me bow my head and read this text. And then somehow, oh, maybe I can come out of it and then start to ask the questions, right? And then start to increase the universe around me. Um, this to me will be the essence of proper teaching as we go forward. That so we do not become, as I said earlier, diseased with certainty, right? And we do not narrow ourselves, and we do not poison ourselves with, with narrowness in relation to lanes that people have to go through. And a large part of that is acknowledging our own ignorance, and our failings, and going into this stuff with honesty. I talk a lot with Marlon James about this. For instance, Marlon is a good friend of mine, brilliant writer. Brief History of Seven Killings won the Booker Prize. He's from Jamaica, incredible artist, and he says to me, yeah, it's not about anything except deep, deep, deep honesty. How deep was the artist willing to go? How honest was the artist willing to be? I guess what? It's the same for teachers, and guess what? I honestly believe it's going to be the same for students too. Because we don't have to push down upon our students. This stuff is much more emergent. I mean, it's much more interesting when it comes from underneath. And the theory of emergence, check it out. That's where the new intelligence of what's happening in these particular times right now is going to come from the emergent theory. And instead of a small cadre of basically men or powerful people or wealthy people saying this is what you should do, it's going to come from underneath, and it's going to be self-correcting, and it's going to be random, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to be very, very, very fine in the end. And if we can work towards that, and if we as teachers can develop that sort of confidence, then I think we will have something profound to say to our students, and with our students, and they'll, quite frankly, make a better country than the one we're living in right now.
Well, thank you so much for that. And that is, from the messages I was getting from people, we know that is something that we struggle with, especially when so many of us are teaching students who don't have similar backgrounds to the ones that we have. And then we're teaching a book that has a different background than any of us. It's something that helps us to feel a little bit more comfortable making those approaches.
And then find the books are there. The books are there too. Yeah.
So we do want to open it up a little bit for some questions and things. And this is when I should let everyone know that often, and Colum, you as well, often it has become that we may run over a little bit past 9 o'clock, but if you have to leave at 9, Colum, if you have to leave at 9, we understand. That is usually how we do some things. And we are kind of informal with that. But again, I want to call someone out in a good way on this. They had a really great post, and I can't find it. Yes, I'd really like her to make her comment to the group, if she doesn't mind, and then see, Colum, if you want to respond to this. But and I do not know this person again, but Teresa Lamar Mandry, if my colleagues could find her and maybe ask her to unmute. Teresa, she said in the chat, it is difficult that we ask our students to do something many adults can't or won't. It speaks volumes about how important it is to teach students how to interact, communicate, and learn with people of all castes, cultures, etc. Now, Teresa, if you were able to come off mute, that's your quote. I mean, that's what you had said. But did you want to expand on that a little bit? I think it really hits hard at the space between Colum's comments and the classroom.
I just I think that it is so hard for our kids to be held up to this model that we don't hold the adults up to. Sometimes they haven't seen adults talk in a civilized way about politics or these complex issues. And here they are kind of discovering them for the first time and teaching those protocols. We just have such an amazing opportunity to teach them how to be in a room with someone that they disagree, like you were saying, Mr. McCann, about the ability to invite people into the room that don't look like you or act like you. I think school's one of those few times we have left with kids where they don't have the ability to isolate themselves from all of their point of views the way we do in today's society. So it's just a great time to capitalize that. And just any ideas you have on helping to teach them or helping to develop a classroom environment where they really get the chance to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, Teresa, thank you so much for that. And you know, I don't really have any of the answers. I actually think that you guys have all the answers. But one of the things that we're doing at Narrative 4 is we're bringing teachers together with artists, and students, and we're proposing these questions, and we're saying we're using the word, instead of like teaching, to sort of allowing in certain ways, and creating an environment where people feel that they can get listened to, and people can sort of say, well, no, I don't necessarily agree, but let's have a constructive conversation about this. Here's what happens in Narrative 4. At the front end of things, we get two people together. They tell their story to one another, and then they tell the story back to one another in the first person. It's kind of an incredible thing. So if myself and Brandon were matched up together, I would tell him a personal story from my life. Not a didactic story, not a, not a moralistic story, but just a personal story. And he would tell me a story from his life, and then I would get back in the group and I'd say, hi, my name is Brandon. And when I was 7 years old, I was walking along by the lake in Kentucky, and certain things happened. And Brandon would get up and say, I'm going to
I'd
unmute him
say,
now.
hi, my name is Colum, and um, when I was growing up in Ireland, I would often walk the road between my grandparents' house and my own house because we lived that close to one another.
Yeah. Wearing a Kentucky Kicks Ass t-shirt. But no, what I want you guys to understand is that this act of stepping into somebody else's life, is an enormously powerful thing for students. And it shifts the universe for them. It makes them know that their own story is important, but it also allows them to see that another person's story is important too. Whether they get the story right or wrong is not even important in the long run. It's about increasing the lungs of the world. This can be done in your own classroom, but it can really be done between classrooms on the other side of town, and then on the other side of the county, and then between states, and eventually between schools all around the world. One of the literature things that we're developing for, say, Things Fall Apart, is that we'll have schools in Kentucky be able to talk with kids in schools in Kentucky, talk with kids in schools in Nigeria. Can you imagine that after reading Things Fall Apart? You know, or the kids in Ireland talking about the Great Gatsby and what the Great Gatsby means to them, and I do believe then, as I said earlier, this. And as Teresa was sort of suggesting, this emergent theory of education can come about, because I know how scary it is to teach. I know how scary it is to feel like an imposter. I know how scary it is to walk in every day, and and yet we do it because we know that it actually is the real work. I mean, it is the real work. Of all the people I've met in my life, I can guarantee you that I can remember my high school teachers, and my primary school teachers. as much as people if not more than people I met yesterday or last week. This is an important job, and guess what? Having that importance is actually a scary and difficult thing. When we can admit that and then get into it and talk about the various contradictions, and that's when we're going to start really changing the nature of what we do. And we need to have a national conversation or an international conversation about what it means to be a teacher, um, and to have pride in the stuff that we really do. I know we have, a National Teachers Day where someone's supposed to put an apple on your table or something like that. Big deal. Let's change that. Let's really change that. And I know it begins with you guys.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Teresa, for letting me put you on the spot. You had such an excellent comment there. As we have reached the top of the hour, I'm going to hand it over to our representative and my former university student, Evan Barker here, who works for Narrative 4 and helped make this possible with his colleagues from Narrative 4 and with Colum's cooperation. While Evan is speaking about what's coming up with Narrative 4 and what you all may be really interested in, I want to ask if you have a question for Colum, go ahead and digitally raise your hand. If you don't know how to do that, I believe it is under, I should know this, but I switched to Google Classroom this year. Sorry, y'all.
It's under reactions there, Brandon.
It's under reactions. Thank you, Tim. Yes, there, I see it. It's under reactions, and go ahead and digitally raise your hand. You will pop up to the top of our list. We'll make sure you get to one or two of you get to ask a question of Colum before we wrap up. But Evan, you want to go ahead and make a couple comments?
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Thanks everybody for being here. And I'm honestly just thrilled to see all this because you all are the big leagues. I never quite made it to teaching AP, but I was always AP adjacent. So I appreciate the expertise in this room. So what Colum referred to earlier about some goings on in Kentucky that actually will be relevant to everybody else. There are two things happening that we'd like to talk about briefly. One is that with a really generous grant from the Mariah Foundation, we are piloting some classroom materials for a Paragon that have been written by our Director of Learning Resources at N4, but also in collaboration with a handful of teachers whom we've recruited. One or two folks that I've spoken with before on this call, which is awesome because these are you all are the creme de la creme. So you're the folks we want to talk to. So that you may be curious about our learning resources, and in a nutshell, as Brandon is fond of saying in class, good teaching is good teaching. So we are not attempting to reinvent the wheel. We're just going to shine it up for the 21st century with a little story exchange spice to it. So, and for those of you who've read A Paragon is a novel that is made for story exchange. And so we are trying to come up with ways to build story exchange into the English language arts classroom, from the middle grades all the way up through high school, for the students who are on level, for the AP kids. This is story exchanges for everyone. And so we, in collaboration with some of my teacher colleagues from around here, we are going to write some work that will go with this book that we can then, innovate, elaborate, and then offer to everybody else in collaboration with Narrative 4. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in getting involved with, the first step is to try a story exchange for yourself and see where this works in your classroom. Because story exchange isn't a thing that works in one format that we then dispense to people. It is a bottom up, what was the term, emergent type thing. Story exchange is different in every classroom, with every teacher, with every group of students. And so we would encourage you to find the way that story exchange is going to work for your students and let them own that and live in that a little bit. And when they own that conversation, you can have a conversation with the text, which is really what we're all about here. So we're not doing anything. We're not trying to split the atom in a new and interesting way. We're just trying to bring this a little bit closer to the students' hearts. And with a book like this, especially in this time in the climate in which we find ourselves, it couldn't come at a better time. So on Twitter, my boss, Kelsey, has posted some links to Narrative 4 events that are free and open to anybody. And we'd love for anybody who would like to join a story exchange to come and experience one on Zoom. You can just join one from the comfort of your home. They cost $0. You'll meet people that you would never have a chance to meet in an ordinary day. And you may get to share a story that really lands on you. And hopefully then bring that to your students.
Thank you, Evan, so much. And I have posted the link in the chat to colummccann.com/narrative-4-main-page. And Evan, is that where people will go to seek out more information about these events?
Yeah, I'll put some links in the chat right now. There are a couple that I'll post. One is a brief video that's about 3 minutes long by Upworthy, where you all can see some students who are real students in Massachusetts doing a story exchange or doing 3 minutes worth of a story exchange. You can join one. Kelsey's posted a link in the chat to our calendar. And so that is constantly updated. We run many of them a week, and you can join those. Just add them to your Google Calendar on Zoom.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I see where Kelsey Roberts has posted that, and you all can find that in the chat. Some of you have asked about having the chat. You can either copy the entire chat and paste it into a Google document, or you can seek out the recording of this. I think, Susan, are we going to be posting that on AP Lit Help again? So
You can
that'll be
also
the AP.
save it by clicking the little 3 dots in the right side of the chat next to where it says file.
Oh, okay.
And
Yes.
it'll save as a .text file wherever you like it.
And the student becomes the teacher. Thank you so much, Evan. I appreciate that. I didn't know that as much as I run with Zoom here. So thank you. Great. So
Brandon, we'll be posting the recording we'll be posting the recordings to the Eventbrite site as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Nikki. So you all can check out the Eventbrite site, which was the main site you went to register. So Colum, we have a question for you from a fairly Irish name, Brendan Riley. Would like to ask you a question, and he's wearing a Trinity College shirt too. So this might be coming at you hard here, Colum. Brendan, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Go ahead. You're muted. Hold on there, Brendan. Go ahead.
You hear me now?
We can.
Mr.
Yes.
McCann, thank you very much for spending your time with us today. You mentioned a theory of emergence. That's new to me, and I wonder if you could just recommend a resource, a place to get started with that. It sounds very interesting.
Well, thank you so much. And maybe Evan or Kelsey can post an article that I put on the in the Guardian newspaper about this very thing. But basically, when you talk about systems, whether they be systems of bees or systems of computers or systems even of birds, one bird is intelligent, but 5 birds are vastly more intelligent, and then a flock of 200,000 birds, which sometimes you get, are so deeply intelligent in that they use their intelligence to inform one another and to look after one another. And these V's that you see that the flocks of birds do in the sky, or these things that the colonies of bees do together to have this incredibly deep intelligence using one another. I actually believe that these emergent theories can be theories that can be applied to the act and the art of teaching, and that as teachers we can work together, and that as students we can work together, and then also as movements we can work together. I believe that one of the fundamental principles of storytelling and of peace building, in fact, and of barrier breaking, is the theory of emergence, where we come together, and as I said earlier, it's self-correcting, it's random, and these things sort of work in unison with one another. And it doesn't deny your individuality. In fact, you remain supremely individual as a teacher or as an artist or as a student or as a thinker, but you also become part of an emergent system that is, you know, talking about some of the more profound and interesting things that we have to confront in today's world, including these very important issues about how are we going to know one another. You know, when I wrote a paragon, for instance, Rami and Bassam are the two main characters, and one is Israeli and one is Palestinian, and they say to each other, "Look, you know what? We don't have to love each other, and guess what? We don't even have to like each other." But what we really have to do is we have to understand one another. Because if we don't understand one another, we will be, 6 feet below ground before anything else happens. And and whether we're red, whether we're blue, whether we're, whether we're Irish, whether we're Australian, one of the things that we have to do is, to make the leap, the radical leap to listening to one another, not necessarily, as I say, having to, love one another or do these things, but invite the other person into the room, and stop putting these like incredibly sort of atomized ideas down, or stop putting like these GPS systems on our imagination that say you only have to be here. I think the act and art of teaching will be one which engages with a sort of broader emergent pattern that is going on. So I think you know if we don't get that posted up on the chat system, I will send it on to Brandon sometime in the week, and we can chat about it. But that's where my ideas about stories, storytelling, the heroics of teachers, the accessibility towards students. That's where a lot of these things come in for me. And is that I'm trying to figure out? It is a Trinity. Which Trinity College is that? The T-shirt.
Dublin.
It's which one?
It's in Dublin.
Dublin's Fair City. Okay, I was wondering, like, because I can only see the top of the T-shirt, so it's like, is that Trinity College in? There we go.
Thank you kindly.
Don't
Thank you very much.
All right. Well,
you.
Colum, thank you so much for this and everything you've given to the community in this space tonight. I want to thank everyone who was able to attend tonight and remind you that we will start up with some breakout sessions tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And Nicole is sharing the slides for tomorrow. And you can see tomorrow for AP Language, everyone's welcome to attend, but this is targeting the AP Language and Composition classroom. We will start at 7, helping students reach the next horizon of view from the college course, and then college classroom. And then at 8 p.m. for literature, patterns and context, teaching students how to decode their world. You're welcome to attend both. They will be held in separate Zoom rooms. That's important for everyone to remember. But with that, I will go ahead and wrap up the session. Thank you so much. And if you want to hang out for just a moment, we usually have like a post hangout a little bit. It just kind of happened last year. If not, I know we all have lives to live and things to do. Thank you, wherever you are. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
So Colum, thank you so much once again. Hopefully you didn't feel, I mean, the things you were giving us so many great things, one right after the other. It's just, I couldn't keep track. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Listen, I mean, I'm very passionate about it, and all of those people that you had on that call there tonight, I mean, they're so important to, and it becomes a community thing, and that's what I meant to say when I was talking about the theory of emergence. It starts local and then becomes bigger and bigger and becomes global. and global in a way. And I think that's incredibly important for us all to to realize. How did you get like so many people involved in all this? It's kind of wonderful.
Um, well, Susan posted last year. Nikki and I responded, and then I thought, Tim's a sucker. He'll help. And I'm
That's
kidding, I didn't
exactly
think
right.
that.
No, that's exactly, I guarantee that's exactly what happened.
I did not at all. No, I thought who are people who could really be helpful with this, really, be energetic and things. And so I thought of Tim and Christy, who do a lot on the communities. And then we brought in Jackie Stallworth as well, who does a lot with the online communities. And then this year, I had to find another person that I just, I thought would be really interested in helping. And we reached out to Alfonso. Alfonso decided to join. And so as far as the people attending, we have a very active online community. The Facebook groups for AP English Language and English Literature are very large, very active, very giving. That's a lot owed to the people who run those groups. Christy Seidel, who couldn't be here tonight, I don't think, runs the language group. And then Brian Stobnick runs the literature group, and they help to foster that community. And when we started posting that we were doing this, people were just jumping on it. And I really think it was in relation to feeling so stymied by, as everyone did, by COVID, and needing some outreach with some colleagues who were going through the same things they were going through, but also about some professional learning. So many of teachers show up, spend their day in their classroom, and then leave because there's so much to do in life and in the classroom. They don't have that time to commiserate with their colleagues. And I think people saw this as that time. And then we had some great sponsors who helped us, said, yeah, we'll support the Zoom. My publisher did that. We had others, John Moscatello from Marco Learning has helped us market it. Karen at Applied Practice has helped us do some marketing too. Some people who were just really seeing what we were doing and supporting it. And when Nikki started telling us we had thousands of people signed up, it blew our mind.
That's great. And is this a PD session? I mean, do they get credit for professional development as well?
Nikki, how do we answer that question?
So we're not affiliated with IACET, so we can't give anything like CEUs, but we do give attendance certificates. And so again, especially because the rules for that vary from state to state. So basically, here's your certificate coming, take it to your district and they can decide what to do with it. But yes.
That's cool. That's cool. I just think, I mean, Evan is still on there, I believe. I mean, we'd like to be part of this in an ongoing basis, Evan, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you threw me the alley-oop there, because I didn't talk about the regional summit, and I'm glad to get a chance to circle back to that, because N4 is, so we had a moment of building prior to 2020, before, in the before times, in the BC, before COVID, and we were planning regional summits in the Northeast and the Southeast, and that did not happen. But we're going to take another crack at it this year. And so we are putting one together for October as a way to get teachers and students together in one place to and do this work in person, and just get to people to converse and have a story exchange, and have an in-person experience after this ghastly, whatever you want to call last year. So yeah, and because this is where the real work is done, right? Not in, governmental initiatives and whatnot. This is just teachers who got together to do something awesome.
I think this is the definition of grassroots, really. And Evan, I think you and Colum, we'd love for you guys to remain involved with whatever next year looks like too. Like, we hadn't planned on doing it this year, but then one of our conferences got canceled again, and lots of people started asking about it online. And so we decided to do it again. And I don't know, Susan, others, we may have painted ourselves into a corner, but it's a good corner to be in. So when you started speaking earlier, Colum, you used the phrase "fail better," and I sent a note to all of the team and said, "Hey, there's our theme for next year." But thank you. It's been a labor of love, and a lot of people have done a lot of work with this. So.
Well, I salute you, and I'm gonna head off here into the wild blue yonder. But I salute you, and I wish you all the very best of luck, and in the next couple of days. But also, I mean, in all the teaching stuff, and if we can help out through Narrative 4 and Evan and the rest of the team in any way, we're going to be there, and we're here to learn from you guys as well. So it's a collaborative experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and have a great night.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Colum.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Colum.
Bye. Cheers, guys.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out. If you don't have to go home, but you got to get the heck out of here, I think we're going to hang out and talk a little bit more about our plans for Mosaic. But thank you, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, Brandon.
You're welcome. Evan, you're welcome to hang out for just a second.
Okay.
Jerry Brown, I guess you can hang out too if you really want.
Jerry.
I'm gonna unmute Jerry here. Let's see.
Yeah. Oh, I got him. I
You
got him.
it. All right.
Brandon,
Yeah, I got
Brandon, do you know that you're still recording this?
That's okay. I'll stop
Okay.
recording right now.